there. We've had a great first service, and I know you're going to love her as much as we do. Please welcome again Robin Herbert Lattimore. She's going to be sharing the original music of David Ault. And
thank you so much for asking me to be here, Penelope. I am always honored but a little timid when I'm asked to sing someone else's creation and they're there. So I pray that I do the song that Dr. Ault has written some justice. Lay it down, set it free. Let my heart rest and let it be. Lay it down, set it free. Put it all on the altar of love. I was walking through the season of dark and lonely change, where the world was on my shoulders and my faith was rearranged. I knew I'd never be given more than I could bear. The Spirit reassured me there was answers to my prayers if I just lay it down, set it free. Let my heart rest and let it be. Lay it down, set it free. Put it all on the altar of love. Every single moment I am left with a choice to stay in separation or listen to the voice that beckons me to open and be grateful for every day. It gently reminds me there I can be a better way. If I just did this, lay it down, set it free. Let my heart rest and let it be. Lay it down, set it free. Put it all on the altar of love. Love is all there is. Love will lead the way. Lay it down, set it free.
best birthday present ever. Thank you. Thank you so much. Wow. Done a lot of traveling in my life. Been very, very fortunate to go many, many places across this amazing planet. And this was my second time to Peru, and I still have the same belief and sensibility about Peru, and that it is unlike any other place I've ever been. Pondering that, why? Why? I think if you go back through the indigenous cultures hundreds and hundreds of years, and you begin to investigate and understand what it is about the indigenous people and the Incan traditions, one of the things that is inevitable is you begin to understand their relationship with the land. So you don't just go and climb a mountain in Peru. You stop and you ask permission of the mountain before you even set foot on that mountain. You don't go and cut a tree down. You go and you hold sacred ceremony and you give thanks for the tree and for all of the gifts and the benefits that it has given and what it will continue to give by cutting that tree down. You don't go and just pluck a flower off of a bush. You don't go and just dig a hole. Everything has a permissive energy to it because you understand that what you are about to do, you are incorporating and you are involving yourself with something that is ancient and very sacred. And so imagine hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of years of that level of reverence and that level of energy and vibration. And you cannot help but, even if you're the most cynical person in the world, you cannot help but feel something when you step foot on that ground. And so one of the things that I know about that is that I often say that love brings up everything unlike itself. How fun is that? So that everything unresolved, everything that is in an energy of separation presents itself, or it rises up in order for you and I to be able to look at it. And so imagine that heightened by 1,000. And so what fun did we have in Peru, all 24 of our beautiful, complex personalities as we walked upon that particular land. And so it reminded me of a quote by the Buddhist nun Pema Chodron. And she said, "Nothing ever goes away until it has taught us what it is that we need to know." Good times. Nothing ever goes away. Nothing ever goes away until it has taught us what it is that we need to know. And we're fascinating creatures because a lot of those lessons, those unlearned lessons then, we really do, without even thinking about it, automatically project and put the responsibility of that lesson in the external world and onto other people. When in reality, if we have just a shred of consciousness or are involved in any kind of truth teaching, we begin to understand that those lessons will just continue to circulate and circulate and circulate until such time that we either make the choice to allow, to open and accept and be amenable to that lesson, or continue to resist that lesson, place blame, withhold, any of those kinds of energies. And so we're teeter-tottering back and forth. And again, obviously, if we don't learn the lesson, what happens? It comes back. You can move to Albuquerque and that lesson will still be there. You can go to Europe and that lesson will still be there. You can get married upteenth times and that lesson will still be there. You can lose yourself in buying shoes and that lesson will still be there. And thus is the nature of life. Nothing ever goes away until it has taught us what it is that we need to know. This month, our theme in Centers for Spiritual Living across the globe is freedom from discord. Freedom from discord. What we understand about freedom like we understand about love, is that freedom just is. Love just is. I love that quote by Rumi that says, do not go out and seek for love, but look at everything within you that is a barrier to love. Allow that to become dissolved. The same with freedom. Freedom just is. And all of these things that are in alignment with, or the virtues of what we understand God or the universe to be, are parts of us. So it's not that you're separate from freedom. It's that your mental state is separate from freedom. It's not that love is devoid of your life. It's that the mental state or the belief that love is separate from you is what is being activated inside of you. So as within, so without. And we begin to understand then that freedom from discord is not wanting somebody else to do something different, but in honoring and understanding the reverence of the sacredness of who and what we are. And so as we walked upon this sacred land in Peru, you start to understand what freedom from discord means. You start to get that sort of mirror right in your face about the responsibility of aligning with the virtues and the values and the high vibrational frequencies of all of that which is truth and love and God in expression. And you become exposed to things that heighten that particular sensibility, that say, really, you're going to keep doing this? Because it's just going to keep circling around, right? And so lo and behold, if intention doesn't work, because every single time I do one of these big trips, I create an intention and I say, I will have the right and perfect guide. It will be a genius guide. It will be someone that will be a joy and a pleasure to work with, that will enrich the group. And lo and behold, if we didn't have Ronnie, this little Peruvian guy, young guy, who was born in the Amazon jungle and never saw any kind of Western entertainment, television, radio, or anything until he was 13 years old, when someone carted in a generator and an old beat-up television and some kind of a DVD player, and his first exposure to that was Conan the Barbarian. And in spite of that, he grew up to be just an incredibly wise, he's about 35, and he's just the most loving, the most brilliant, the most wise, intelligent guide that led us so brilliantly and so sweetly and sacredly. But because of his background and his heritage, he also had a very deep, abiding, reverent relationship with the Quero shamans and healers of Peru. If you don't know who the Quero shamans are, they are a group of indigenous healers who, like many other people, during the Spanish Inquisition within the 1600s, fled. Now, they happened to flee so good that Western civilization didn't find them until the early 1950s. And so can you imagine in all of these years, as they continued to cultivate their wisdom and their ancestry and their reverence for the land, the potency and the power of these people. And lo and behold, he brought a husband and wife Quero shaman team to be with us in our group. When I say brought them, they were actually on the bus with us. And so they would walk by you and the hairs on your arm would stand up. And we had not one, not two, not three, but 4 different ceremonies with these particular shamans. So that was something that was incredibly out of the box and not on a brochure. The one ceremony that was quite meaningful for me was on the day when we traveled to the ruins of Moray. When I say ruins, in Peru, a lot of the ruins are more the architectural landscape of the terraces where they used to do the agriculture. And Moray is these beautiful panoramic terraces that have been around since the dawn of the Incan civilization. You can't really today go into these things and do ceremony. Just the government and the rules and the restrictions now are so rigid with things like that over time because of the onslaught of tourism. But Ronnie and his lovely wife passed some Peruvian soles to the guards. And wouldn't you know, if we got to crawl into the womb of the ruins of Moray, the womb of the Mother Earth, the Pachamama, with these Q'ero shamans, and all 24 of us sat in sacred circle, and each of us was afforded the opportunity to have healing by these particular shamans. Pema Chodron said, nothing ever goes away until it has taught you what it is that you need to know. We're funny. We intellectualize a lot of stuff, don't we? You know, you've probably heard many stories about my mother, lovely woman. And intellectually, I totally get, I totally understand, I totally believe I chose her on a soul level. And because of her inability to love, because of her rage, because of her abusive nature and her narcissism and all of that, it made me, it groomed me to be who I am today. And so intellectually, I can appreciate that and I can love that. And I can honor that, and I can give thanks for the fact that she was the portal by which she gave me life, and I came into this world. And I can even tell you that she was my greatest teacher. And without her, on a soul level, I don't know if I would have chosen or have been hungry for the path that I'm in, intellectually. In my heart, yeah, take her or leave her. And so here we are, and I told you, the Q'ero healers, they're a husband and a wife. And so what the shamans have is something called a Mesa. And a Mesa is, and I'm not an expert on this, so I'm going to give you a rudimentary explanation, but a Mesa is first comprised of a piece of sacred textile. It is sort of a piece, and in the Q'ero shaman tradition, and in the shamanic traditions, a lot of these textiles are something that either has been woven by them or has been handed down to them generation after generation. Within this textile, this Mesa then, or the 4 quadrants that represent the north, the south, the east, and the west, each of these quadrants then comprise objects, healing objects. So here we are in the womb of the temple, the ruins of Moray, and these shamans are there, the husband and wife, and they have their mesas. So inside, what I understand is in the south quadrant of the Mesa is something that represents Mother Earth. It's the Pachamama. It's where a stone or a crystal resides. Now, this stone or this crystal isn't just some random stone or crystal, but it's something that has either been handed down to them from the medicine people, something that has been indigenous between their lineage that they have held sacred, that, can you imagine, has the vibration and the energy of hundreds of years of healing within this. That sits within the Mesa. In the other quadrant, which is the west, which represents the ocean, there is something like a seashell then that represents that particular part of nature. In the north, which represents spirit, there will be some kind of feather, something that indicates not being bound by the earth. And then in the east, which represents the sun, there will be pieces or particles of a candle, something that can be burned, which represents the heat and the passion and the life-giving force of that which is the sun. Those things then sit within this sacred textile. And then in the middle is a particular object that is sacred to them as an individual. This is their Mesa. So imagine an artist. If you were a painter, you would never begin to paint without a brush and a canvas and paints. If you were a writer, you would never sit without a pencil or a tablet or something. You would never not cast your line of intention into that infinite field of words and sentences and themes and draw that and put that into paper. If you were a farmer, you would never go about the business of farming without having seed and soil. So if you are a shaman, you do not do your work without your Mesa. And so here they are with their Mesa, which is folded very meticulously. And we began to, one by one, go up to them. Can you imagine these indigenous people chanting in both sides of your ears, having their individual mesas, and then beginning to pound that mesa, and I say pound, on your head, on your chest, any area within your physical body that they can detect is out of alignment. There were people in the group, one woman had broken her back. They went immediately to her back. They don't speak English, they only speak Quechua. And they were pounding you with these mesas. And as they were doing this, it wasn't the man so much that had an effect, it was the woman. She was beating me with her mesa. Guess what came up for me? Mama. Except this particular contact was not from an abusive state, but it was from something so profoundly loving that I could begin to weep. And I began to move from the intellect into my heart, and I began to consider little Genevieve, which was my mother's name, for the first time as a little girl. What do we understand about people and nature is that hurt people. And so it's not that she was raised to be this rageaholic. It's that as a little girl, something must have been done to her generationally to begin to pass that energy on, doing the only thing that she knows to do. And all of a sudden, the intellect within my head began to burst, and the fire was coming out of my head and out of my chest, and I just began to sob because what I knew was that I had never sat down with little Genevieve and allowed her to be cradled by me. And as that Quero shaman woman did that, I began to have a physical sensation, a physical change within the molecular structure of my heart that perhaps had been void for a very long time. Nothing ever goes away until it has had the opportunity to teach us what it is that we need to know. Many of us have intellectualized ourselves out of the lessons. And then we find ourselves in situations where we are humbled and we realize that we are infants in terms of consciousness, and there's our teacher now calling us. And so, I doubt that many of us in this room will ever be shamans or will ever construct a mesa, although I don't want to not let that be, let that be void of an opportunity. But I want you to metaphorically think about the fact that you, in your own shamanic state, in your own level of consciousness, have the ability, whether you realize it or not, to use the mesa of your spirituality by the way in which you show up in the world. So let's go back to the quadrants. The south, the Mother Earth, that which is stone and crystal. When you think of stone and crystal, you think of something as solid. What is it about you that is solid? What I would hope, as students of truth, is that the solid nature of your consciousness is one of a deep knowing. When I say a deep knowing, that regardless of the cycle of the world, regardless of trends, regardless of anything that transpires in the political realm or the financial realm or news, that none of that detracts from the solidness or the knowing of who you are, of what you are, and that the power of consciousness has the ability to be able to transcend all effect and all illusion. So you place that particular level of knowing in the south quadrant of your mesa. In the west of that which is the fluidity and the change, the ocean, it's almost as if it's the polarity of that which is solid, isn't it? It requires us to understand and operate and accept the idea of non-attachment. I know of no one who speaks of illness, researches illness, identifies with illness, entertains illness, who will be nothing other than the instrument of illness. I know of no one who speaks of limitation, prepares for limitation, fears limitation, and believes in limitation, who will be nothing other than the instrument of limitation. I know of no one who is silently self-loathing, who will ever attract loving partnership in their life by trying to fix themselves through body and not through the restoration of their soul. And so in the level of fluidity and non-attachment, we begin to understand that we are not this. I'm not attached to this or that, but that I am a part of something that is undeniably universal, powerful, loving, all-consuming, which is life itself. I also understand in this realm of non-attachment that I have the ability to remember what a gift is. Years ago when I lived in Los Angeles, I used to travel once a month to Santa Barbara to sit in sacred space with this elder woman who was a meditation teacher from the lineage of Joel Goldsmith. And she had been a student of Joel Goldsmith and a friend of Joel Goldsmith. So I would drive and I would sit. I became aware of the fact that it was going to be her birthday. And she was going to be 89. And so I bought this beautiful potted plant. And I was so proud when I showed up and I presented her with this potted plant and I said, "Happy birthday. Thank you so much for what it is that I get from these meditations." And she said, "Oh, thank you so much." And then she went and she took the potted plant and she said, "Here," and she gave it to somebody else in the meditation group. What up with that? And so I asked her, I said, hello? And she said, "I want to teach you non-attachment. I want to teach you the difference between a gift and an obligation. Because if you're going to give me something, then the moment that you give it to me, it's no longer yours. If you're going to loan me something, then now I am in obligation to the way in which that thing gets used." Many of us think that we're giving gifts to people when really what we're doing is we're loaning them things because we want to control the outcome by which they use the gift. In your Mesa, in the west portion that represents the ocean, you get to distinguish between what is a gift and what is an obligation. What I hope that you put into that is the gift. In the north, which represents the spirit, which would be a feather, something unencumbered by human limitation of space and time, it's one of my favorite things to teach to you, and that is the power of your imagination. What you put into your Mesa in this north quadrant is the idea that nothing is impossible. The brilliant, the genius, Muhammad Ali said impossible is just a big word thrown around by small men who find it easier to live in the world they've been given than to explore the power they have to change it. Impossible is not a fact, it's an opinion. Impossible is not a declaration, it's a dare. Impossible is potential. Impossible is temporary. Impossible is nothing. It's whatever it is that you declare it to be. And so you take that which is spirit, which is unencumbered by the density of this earth experience, and you put that into the north quadrant of your spiritual mesa. And then the east, which is the sun, where the shamans would put some kind of candle or something in there. That represents the burning of your passion and your creativity, and the reason why your footprint, your fingerprint, your soul print exists in this world today. And how are you honoring that? And are you willing to get up and walk out of a space that does not honor the passion and the beauty and the brilliance and the talent of who and what you are? Because, as you know, if you do not make space for that, it will remain in the realm of the intellect and in the energy of wishing, when all along it is tangible. And in order for us to grow, we must outgrow. And so in the quadrant then of that east is where you place the respect of your individualized passion. And then in the center of that, is that sacred object, that sacred meaningful thing that is particularized for you. And guess what goes in the center of that mesa? You do. Your beauty, your understanding that in this space-time continuum, your soul chose to come into this experience in order for you to revel in the joy and the expansion of God as you. Imagine constructing that kind of metaphoric mesa. My friend, who is a shaman, came into my office before second service and sacredly initiated me and allowed me to have his traveling mesa. So I'm going to hit all of you over the head. Some of you harder than others. But I do send the sacred vibration of this, which contains everything that we talked about, to this group over here, to this group here, to this group here, to this group here. And I implore you to remember who you are. And I'd also like to give you this. Don't let it be a metaphor. For the month of June, what if you re-listen to this talk, you write down all of the quadrants, and you construct your own mesa? I can think of no better mental stimulant for you to create sacred space within your living quarters. And in that sacred space, that you have something of this nature that you can look at and that you can remember and that you can get in touch with your truth and your authenticity. That is the gift of the world waiting for you. Can you imagine the universe standing on tiptoe, applauding you the moment that you take the necessary initiative to honor yourself as sacred? And so it is.